Yesterday afternoon at about 2:40, a young woman stepped into Bergen Mercy Hospital carrying a newborn child in a little basket. She went into a restroom and then came out of the restroom without the basket. People went in there, they found, hey, there's a baby here in the bathroom. It's, I believe, a little boy. Yeah, a newborn boy, weighs 8 pounds, less than 24 hours old yesterday when they found him. So they're looking for what is presumably the child's mother. Woman's described as being a white female, early 20s, maybe late teens, shoulder-length brown hair. Lucy, that sounds like you.
It does.
Just be glad this isn't the first day back after that 2-week exodus you took earlier this summer.
See, now I have.
You.
Do you know I have people asking me how the baby is because of you?
Yes. Yeah,
No
Lucy had to
babies.
take a couple of weeks off there for some medical issues this summer, but don't worry, they were able to save the baby. That's just what I told everybody.
I know you did. Believe me, I'm hearing about it.
The girl was wearing a short-sleeve white T-shirt and blue pants. Stand up. That's what you're wearing.
Just stop.
That'd be about the right time frame.
Stop.
They want to catch this woman, if it is the child's mother who abandoned the baby. I mean, whoever it was abandoned this baby. And they want to catch this woman so they can put her in jail. Never mind the fact that in pretty much every other state in the country, you can take a newborn child to the hospital and drop it off like a movie you just watched and drive away and go to Burger King and enjoy the rest of your life and not worry about a thing. In every other state, it seems like you can do that. Not in Nebraska.
Do you really think they'll throw her in jail?
Let's talk about that with our expert on the phone from BabySafeHavenNewEngland.com. Mike Morrissey's on the line with us this morning. Mike, welcome back to 1110 KFAB.
Well, it's great to be here. I wish it was under some better circumstances.
We never call you, to talk about fun stuff, do we?
No, it's a tough job, but as they say, somebody's got to do it, and it's very rewarding once you see things that are happening, such as we've seen here in Massachusetts.
You're the official abandoned baby expert on the 1110 KFAB, Mike.
Yep, that and the Nancy Grace show also.
Yeah, and you do the show with Nancy Grace. How can you talk with her, out of curiosity?
How can I talk to Nancy Grace?
How does anyone talk to Nancy Grace?
I have the privilege of looking at her through a monitor here in Boston while she's in, I believe it's New York, so We're 200 miles apart.
All right. Mike, if they catch this woman, what happens to her?
Well, here's why the woman walked in and walked out anonymously. There are 48 states now that have what we term in New England baby safe haven laws. It's a great sort of brand name that's grown through New England and parts of the country. And in that, this young woman in any of those 48 states, Nebraska is the only one in the continental United States that doesn't, so you are surrounded. And the other one is Alaska. They're both working on getting the laws passed. But she could walk into the hospital and hand the baby to anybody. I say you can put a hoodie over your head and bring it down over your eyes so you can't be recognized, and then you can walk away. And in those states, there's no chance of any kind of prosecution. But in Nebraska, she could be arrested, and I looked up the laws, and that's what they're afraid of the most. Not the jail sentences or anything else. It's just the initial arrest, because then, you guys and my former workmates in the media will be out there saying, so-and-so did this. That's what the fear is of being that kind of exposure. But she, under any other states, would be able to walk away with no prosecution. But she'd still be able to call our hotlines, of which we have all over the country, and give medical information, come back and give, sign an adoption contract, or give any of the background and family information, which is happening more than you'd suspect in most of the other states that have these laws. So it isn't just walking away. Generally what happens is this young woman or someone like her is in a crisis, and sometimes those crises are kind of temporary. Once the baby's in safe hands and she's in a safe place, the steam sort of goes down, and she starts to think about this. She can call the hotline back, get the counseling, and then sometimes we actually have them reclaiming and going through, all kinds of help, and obviously social services comes in and make sure instruction and care and tutoring, and they're making sure everything's done properly before they're reunited, and that happens. So it's not as simple as you think. There's actually a lot that goes on after the baby is surrendered.
A woman can go in there and drop off a baby, and at some point later be reunited with the child. That has to take a whole lot of effort on the part of counselors.
Yeah, well, obviously, it's not something that gets done overnight. They don't just say, "Oh, it's yours," and hand it back. There's a lot of counseling. There's a lot of parenting plans. There's, visitations at first, and we actually had something similar to that here in Massachusetts just before the law was passed. Well, the last baby that was abandoned, similar circumstances, she left it in front of a little girl, actually, in front of a fire station that was unmanned. But you would have thought it was looking at it. But then somebody found the baby a couple hours later. And that baby is living with the young woman right now. That was 3 years ago, though.
But in Nebraska, these authorities are looking for this anonymous woman, and she could go to jail, right?
She could. Once arrested, I looked up the laws. It could potentially be either a Class 1 misdemeanor or a Class 3A felony, which is an offense of committing knowingly and intentionally abandonment that does not result in bodily injury.
But since she lives here in Omaha, she could have driven a few more moments across the river and gone over to a hospital in Council Bluffs and dropped off a baby there with no fear of anything happening to her, right? Can you cross state lines and abandon a baby in one of these states that has safe haven laws?
Yes, you can, and actually that did happen. Again, I'll always go back to my home state of Massachusetts. Before our law passed, we were surrounded by states on the southern end, and a couple from Connecticut called the hotline, which is based in New York, and that's actually a national number. I can give it out. And she called, and she had a 3.5-pound preemie, and they said, bring that baby to the largest possible hospital as close to you. It was in the middle of the winter, warm up the car, and they counseled them exactly how to do it, make sure the baby was breathing. And they rushed the baby to the nearest hospital, which was north up the major highway and just over the border in Massachusetts. And we did not have a law at the time. Caused a lot of problems, similar to what you're seeing. But, yes, this could have been interstate, or this could have been a student that came from, any place in the country that does have a baby safe haven law. That's the one thing that's not necessarily known right now. 99.5% of the U.S. population lives in a state with a baby safe haven law. Therefore, 99.5% of your students going to Nebraska universities, and you've got some big ones there, they could come from states that have safe haven laws and know all about them, because 85 to 90% of young people in Massachusetts know all about our safe haven law.
It's just amazing. And we're talking here this morning with Mike Morrissey from Baby Safe Haven New England. They're on the web at babysafehavennewengland.com. It's amazing that a woman would... I would think that her family, or at least her friends or employers or someone would know, hey, she's pregnant. She just gained a bunch of weight here over the last 9 months, and now she's back. The weight is going away. How's the baby? Oh, I didn't have a baby. When women abandon these children at hospitals when they are protected by the law, do they try and go about their lives like nothing happened?
I would say that, this isn't too dissimilar from somebody that's pregnant, not wanting to be pregnant for whatever reason, and going through an adoption area where she goes into an adoption plan. The difference is a lot of times these women are denying their pregnancy either to everybody she knows or potentially even internally denying she's pregnant herself, but going through the motions of hiding the pregnancy. And nowadays, with bigger, looser, baggier clothes, it's a lot easier to hide a pregnancy. So you'd be surprised. Women, from an average I've seen, they tend to be, 5'4", 5'5", and maybe about 110 to 115 pounds. Those are the ones that hide the pregnancy the best.
You're kidding me.
Not kidding you.
That's about how much Lucy weighs.
Come on, leave Lucy alone.
Yeah.
I can't.
Thanks. We need this guy on all the time.
Well, Mike,
all right.
Most importantly here, you've had your eyes set on Nebraska as being one of the only 2 states in the country that do not have a safe haven law for dropping off a child in a hospital. Is there any action going on in the state that might finally get Nebraska over there with the rest of the country?
Yeah, well, Hawaii just passed theirs. It went into effect July 1st, and it was an override of a governor's veto. And usually it's based on the same information that now has been totally disproven by the 48 states that have them. Because your legislature is on a 2-year session, it's passed the House and it's stuck in the Senate, and it's almost exactly the same in Alaska. So basically it's a race to the finish line for the last 2 states. The one thing that is going on is something is going on in Nebraska right now, potentially in the next day or two, that was going on in many other states, in that local communities will start taking up baby safe haven local ordinances. We know of one person in Lincoln, Nebraska, that's potentially going to file for a local ordinance in the next couple of days. If anybody wants to follow that up in any of the other cities or counties or municipalities, they could contact us through babysafehavennewengland.com. Our email address is on there. Look up the links and so forth, and we have all the information. And we did the same thing in Massachusetts. We had 25 local communities pass local ordinances. The city of New York had a baby safe haven law ahead of New York State, and actually the first safe haven law was in the county of Mobile, Alabama, ahead of Alabama, and actually Texas was the first state that passed it back in 1999. So going city by city, town by town is not unusual. So that's actually looking potentially to take place in Nebraska anytime in the next few hours.
How easy is it, Mike, to pass a local ordinance?
Well, in Massachusetts, a lot harder. In states like New York and in other communities, it depends on your state constitution or laws as to how that happens. In some places, criminal laws then have to be approved by the legislature, so they're petitions or home rule petitions, as they call it in Massachusetts. And at that point, it has to be approved by the legislature. So you may see 5, 10, 15 of these local ordinances that have to be cleared by the legislature along with the statewide safe haven effort. So at that point, what generally happens is when they see the city councils we have town meetings here in New England, we're famous for those, and we had about 15 of them where it was a 99% positive vote. In some of these town meetings, all you have to do is walk in and be a voter, and you can vote on the ordinances and the laws, and generally it's taxation and things like that. So what happens is they see communities voting on these, and the legislators take very specific note of that and rush the bills through a little bit faster. So yes, it is a pressure tactic, but it has been history that I think about a dozen communities pass their safe haven ordinances ahead of the state laws. Generally a DA then has to be involved also because they don't want prosecution.
Why is this held up in Nebraska?
For the same reason it's been held up in most of the last 4 or 5 states. Part-time legislatures are the number one reason because, you've got health care, budgets, roads, taxes, a lot of important things supposedly to work on, and I don't say supposedly in a bad way, but life and limb of a newborn, 1 or 2 potentially a year somehow doesn't rate up to those. And they work on all those bills, and then there's no time for the others. So if there's 1 or 2 state reps or senators, and generally that's all there is, putting up some type of flack or information or disinformation that then has to be disproven, that slows it down and it gets stuck in that logjam before the last few bills pop through. And that's what's been happening in Vermont was the previous state, Hawaii before just recently, and New Hampshire also. Those are all part-time legislatures. So that tends to be the main thing. So there generally is 1 or 2 state reps or senators, and I know of 1 state senator, and he's using all of the same information that's been totally disproven by state agencies, such as more babies will be dropped off. Blatantly false. Babies will be stripped of their backgrounds and heritages. All 6 of the safely surrendered newborns in Massachusetts have their medical backgrounds, and also 4 of the 6 women came back and signed adoption contracts. The other 2 gave their family histories.
You said, so Mike, there's 1 state senator in Nebraska who's holding this up?
Yeah, from what I understand, it's Senator Ernie Chambers.
Really? How about that? I never would have guessed that one man would hold up an entire unicameral. I'll tell you, Mike, come to Nebraska and get under the power of State Senator Ernie Chambers?
Well, I was in Hawaii working with the state legislators back around the 4th to 10th of July when they did their override vote, and did some media similar to the talk shows and some morning TV shows, and worked with them and brought reports from all over the country. And if it takes my wife and I going back to Nebraska along with many of the Safe Haven Alliance, there's a group, an alliance of Safe Haven foundations and even state officials, we'll be happy to show up in Nebraska and bring all of the information. I've got the official reports from all over New England, New York, New Jersey, and a lot of other states. And these are the state agencies. They're very particular, right down to the last, where the TV commercials were bought on top of that and how much money was spent.
Are you a white guy, Mike?
Yes, I am.
Well, State Senator Chambers will not talk with you then.
Well, then he might want to talk to Oprah Winfrey, who recently did a TV show on safe haven laws, and one of her statements was, at the time, this was before Hawaii, said that there's only 3 states that don't have it, and maybe after watching this show, they'll do it.
Can we have Oprah call State Senator Chambers, because no one else can seem to get him in line with anything?
I'll send him the DVDs of the program.
I don't know. He doesn't have email. I don't think he has a DVD player.
Well, we'll make sure that it's played.
Now, this guy is, oh boy, I could go on for days. All right, Mike, good information this morning. Thanks a lot for the time. We'll certainly check back with you. It's Mike Morrissey from BabySafeHavenNewEngland.com. Mike, thanks a lot.
I appreciate it.